Greetings, Namaste. Welcome to our webinar this evening. My name is Nayaswami Devarshi. I'm here with Brahmachari Premdas. And we do this every week, every Friday, based on the book by Swami Kriyananda ji, Affirmations for Self-Healing. So we'll begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda ji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, great masters, help us to become more and more aware of thy power flowing through us, that it is only you that keeps us alive, that every cell in our body is alive only through your power, your divine creation. We are your very own. Free us from the delusion of littleness, of separation. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Again, welcome. Each week we read from Swami Kriyananda ji's book, one of the 52 weekly readings on different qualities of the spiritual path that are very important to develop. This week, the quality is awareness, which is very important. And we'll begin with what Swamiji writes on this topic. Awareness deepens the more it is centered in itself. But the farther a person's interests extend outside himself, the thinner the supply, I'll start that over again, sorry. But the farther a person's interests extend outside himself, the thinner the supply line of his awareness becomes. If a person's consciousness is centered outwardly in things, it takes on those qualities which it attributes to those things. Jewelers, for instance, often have bright eyes. People with no sense of higher values have dead eyes. Man needs to learn to change his focus from what he is aware of to what he is aware with. He needs to become more aware at the source of his awareness, at his deepest center, God. Through this awareness, his enjoyment even of the surrounding world becomes intensified 1,000-fold. So let's affirm together, first very loudly, and then more and more quietly. Repeat after me. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. A little more quietly and inwardly, I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. And now whispering, I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. And now mentally only, I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. And now, mentally again, but offering the words and the meaning up to the spiritual eye, to the center of superconsciousness. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. And let's mentally listen to this prayer. Infuse me from my deepest center with thy joy. Make me aware of thee, my divine beloved, in all that I behold. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And now Brahmachari Premdas will share some words and thoughts on this topic.
Thank you, Devarshi ji, for this reading. And so I think if you're able to see me, I think the camera is shifting. And so today's topic is awareness. So today's topic is awareness. And so just going through the reading, each time we are like, in the monastery, we do this reading every day. It's like one of those things, like every team has its own small song or some secret thing where they all band together. This affirmations for self-healing is one such thing in the monastery, where every day morning before we start, even though if we are scattered in places sometimes, we all tune into the Zoom world and then we all do this affirmation together. This somehow keeps us all, it's one force that's holding us together in many ways. So I'm just going to look at the reading today as we, for example, in this, Swamiji mentions about how there are so much deep thoughts here. So I'll just share on few things what it has become for me, what I understand more now. So in the beginning days of spiritual path, like let's say even in the beginning days when I came to Ananda, and then I was trying to become aware. So for example, it said awareness precedes control. So in the beginning, I was more mindful, you can say. I was trying to become more mindful. I used to joke with Romaji back then in Bangalore, where she's the center leader in Bangalore, and I used to tell sometimes even while brushing my teeth, I am lost in thoughts. I don't remember where I've gone, and she somehow started nodding her head. How does that happen? So I think she just crossed all these things, but for me in the beginning, I could not even just focus there. But now, I started meditating, started doing all these practices. I've come some distance, but still, lot needs to be covered. But becoming more mindful was one first thing that started happening. So mindful of actions, mindful of thoughts, mindful of how people speak, or mindful of how the things happen in the world. All these things. Now, slowly, I'm becoming aware of one more thing. Becoming mindful is like one step, then how you, for example, here Swamiji uses the word, the focus needs to shift from what you are aware of to what you are aware with. So so it becomes like, you can see sometimes, I'm just trying to give you an example where, for example, I need to work with people sometime or communicate more. Sometimes you have to inspire someone on your team to get the project moving, let's say. And many times it's, how do I put it? So I'm just like, if I see some, let's say, some small quality which is not really uplifting, or which I think it's negative, which is this. So how do I deal with it? So in this situation, what Swamiji is referring to is what you become aware with. For example, we all have to become aware of the divine presence. So in the same, just not of those negative quality or some quality which is not really uplifting, but at the same time you're becoming aware of God's presence. So in truth, it's like all of us are our highest potential. So now when I look at this person, when I communicate, I'm looking at those qualities and giving energy to those which are the highest nature. So then the smallest ones anyway start disappearing. This is one way to which has helped me to work with. I'm starting to understand while I communicate with people. I think this might be even helpful for you. And according to this reading, the awareness. So how do we start becoming aware of God's presence? So as you know, Param ji said God can be felt as 8 virtues. Like for example, the qualities are peace, calmness, love, power, wisdom, etc. So you start becoming aware of these qualities, and then you start like not only becoming mindful but also in a way becoming aware, and also using this awareness to see God's presence everywhere. So I think many times in the beginning of after taking Kriya initiation or during Kriya initiation, we meet many students who tell that for me, I meditate for 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, but other than that, I have so much business to do. And I think all the acharyas and even Swamiji has shared that we have to spiritualize the whole thing, like make it aware, also add that awareness of God's presence all through the day, not just when we are sitting in the puja room just or doing meditation, and not the other times when we are dealing with other projects or challenges or something. So becoming mindful. Second step now I'm realizing is becoming aware with God's presence everywhere. So I think this might be helpful for you all. And today, as I was preparing for this topic, the next part I would like to discuss about is Swamiji has written a book called, I was just looking at it, it was written somewhere some 20 years ago, 1989. It's called 26 Keys to Living with Greater Awareness. So in this book, Swamiji clearly states that in the beginning, this is the first para in the intro, study of lives of all successful men and women suggests two characteristics common to all of them. He says first point is abundance of energy, particularly for those activities in which they have achieved their success. And second one, greater than usual degree of awareness. So it's very high up in the list now, great usual degree of awareness. So, and he also goes on to say that many times if you see mediocre people, it's because they are lacking in one of these two things. For example, putting out that high energy where they're not ready to, when some big task come, their mind is like, they don't feel inspired to say yes or to take up it because it involves a lot of hard work and a lot of energy and commitment many times. So, and the second point is awareness. So even there is this point of enthusiastic awareness. So I'll just try to read some points from this book, from this 26 keys, that I think you will be able to appreciate it, and we can all add this to our daily life. He says in one of the points, be active, never passive in response to life's challenges. Willing activity will awaken within you the thought that something can be done about every problem you face. Even many times I've seen that whenever I'm in this sort of consciousness and this sort of attitude, I'll be able to solve all problems. Now, sometimes if my attitude or my consciousness goes down, then I start trying to find fault with everything. So even you might have discovered this. So just trying to be in that state of awareness or consciousness can really help you. And a few more things here is make a habit of holding your body erect, whether standing or sitting. An erect spine induces positive mental attitudes. Then one more next point is develop a preference for foods that are high in energy and nutrients as opposed to those which merely stick to the ribs. Remember, diet plays an important role in your mental as well as your physical well-being. I'll read one more point. Be keenly, this is very interesting. Yeah, I think I'll need to start practicing this point. Listen to this. Be keenly interested in everything. Don't wait for things to make you interested. Awareness is not so much a matter of what one is aware of as what he is aware with. Make interest in things a matter of deliberate, conscious practice. If you tell yourself, I will become interested. When I can find something in that awakens my interest, you'll find yourself becoming progressively bored with everything. Always be open instead to new possibilities, new ideas, and new points of view. I hope this is helpful in some ways to all of you. And so it's very important for us to become aware of God's presence. I think I'll just end with a small analogy which Swamiji had shared when I was listening to one of his talks. He said, for us all in the spiritual path, it's important to become aware of God's presence. He says that as you meditate, and all these practices are very helpful. And he gave this analogy of radio, where when you're trying to tune into the station, sometimes you hear static. In the same way, our minds are always in the static mode. If we can just calm them down and we can start opening our heart and being willing to that direction, we'll be able to become aware of God's presence, and then you can spiritualize your whole day with that awareness. So with this, I'll ask Nayaswami Devarshi ji to share with all of us.
Thank you, Premdas. Yes, we definitely don't want to become progressively bored with everything. The way that it can happen if you wait for the thing itself to create the interest in yourself and the awareness of it. And it is something that we can consciously work on, is this quality of awareness. One of the ways to work on it is what Paramhansa Yogananda ji taught. When he first came to America, he would be on a lecture tour, and he spoke to thousands of people. And his level of energy was so high, and his level of awareness was so high. And if he was speaking to an audience that was dull and asleep, they just had a big, heavy meal of American steak and, you know, food that was sticking to their ribs and pulling their energy down, and they were kind of sleepy, he would run out onto the lecture platform and he would shout out, "How feels everybody?" And then he would shout with them in response. And imagine 2,000 voices shouting this in response. "Awake and ready." And then he would shout out, "How is everybody?" Awake and ready. And so he really wanted to wake people up so that they could really tune in with energy, with awareness, with alertness, with awakeness to these higher teachings. Because we can't really absorb higher teachings, higher consciousness, unless we are truly aware, and that requires a higher degree of energy. Now, we are in an age of energy. People very often think that we are in Kali Yuga. That's sort of the mantra that people think because they see a lot of ignorance and suffering and such. Yogananda said, no, we have transitioned from Kali Yuga to Dwapara Yuga, and it is an age of energy. Swami Kriyananda wrote about Yogananda ji and his mission in coming into this world. He said, Yogananda came as a harbinger of this new age of Dwapara. A pivotal teaching of his, indeed, is contained in his energization exercises, which were designed to make one more aware of the energy in the human body. And so a key part of what Yogananda brought was to develop this awareness of energy. We are in an age of energy right now. People, scientists have discovered that matter is not a thing. Matter itself is energy. The atoms that make up an object are full of energy. And splitting the atom creates atomic energy. It's just, everything is energy. And we really, those who think we're in Kali Yuga, yeah, if you think, yeah, we're in Kali Yuga, all is matter, yeah, you'll put yourself to sleep thinking that thought, because it just, you start to relate to everything as matter, as just dull, solid stuff. But if you start tuning in with awareness that everything is energy, everything is divine, then you start to wake up and you start to have this type of high awareness, awakeness, readiness to really see God in all things, in all creation, including in ourselves. And so this is why Yogananda ji taught meditation. starting with developing and increasing our level of energy and awareness. As Premdas said, awareness precedes control. And this is an aphorism. Swami Kriyananda ji said it once, applying it to the yoga postures particularly, but you could apply it to every aspect of your life. Energy control is called pranayama. This is something that's a prerequisite for spiritual advancement, is having control over our life force. But in order to have control over that life force, we first have to start to be aware of that life force. This is why meditation, Yoganandaji's, the Hong Sau technique of meditation that he taught, it starts to calm the waves of restlessness and agitated feeling of the heart. And when those agitated waves of feeling in the heart are calm, we start to see more clearly. We start to not see the world with eyes of restlessness, with a heart that's full of restlessness and emotion. We start to see it with calm awareness. And this is why these basic techniques of energization, Hong Sau, are so important to going deep into meditation. Because once we reach that center of calm awareness within ourselves, then we start to perceive everything differently. There's that expression, how some people view the world through rose-colored glasses. And it means that people see the world through these glasses that are always pink or rose-colored, and everything looks pink and beautiful and pretty and soft and all this kind of thing. But the reality is that we are all looking through restless colored glasses, through angry colored glasses, through joy, divine bliss colored glasses. And so a saint, their perception, they're perceiving with this divine awareness. And because they're perceiving with divine awareness, with divine bliss, they see bliss everywhere, in every atom of creation, in all beings, in all souls, including their own soul and in themselves. And so if we can change where we are aware from, which is usually on the periphery, because waves of restlessness cause us to start to relate to the restlessness in the world and to sort of, glom onto it and to stick to those things. And so our awareness starts to be on our periphery of our consciousness. But when we can come back to our center twice a day, ideally, maybe more if we can come regularly back to our center, deep in ourself, by practicing meditation, we start to reverse, or we start to change the point of awareness that we perceive from. And it starts to just become more and more inward and more deep from this spiritual center within ourselves. And once we start to perceive from this spiritual center, we start to relate to others, and we relate to their spiritual center. A friend of mine says that when she talks to someone, rather than just relating on the level of personality, she says she'll sometimes visualize a rainbow going from the top of her head, arcing across and entering the top of their head, connecting them, sort of in a divine way, connecting their divinity, so that it's God relating to God, rather than me, this little self, relating to that person and their little self, which is more on the level of personality. And you'll find that if you practice this, it doesn't become just this spaced out, vague kind of thing of relating with your head in the clouds and, in a vague kind of a way. You find that if you really do it with energy and with awareness, you really can start more sensitively tuning in from your spiritual heart to their spiritual heart. And you can help people better. You can understand them better because you're tuning into the center of their awareness and what's causing their problems. And you're able also, just with divine friends, you're able to relate on the level of divine joy and just share, just even in a simple way, the divine joy, humor, charm of this universe as you go through your days and as you go through your life. So really be aware of changing the center of where you are aware from to this high energy, but very calm, deep spiritual center within. When you start to do that, you'll start to see that everything in the world looks very, very, very different. It looks very beautiful. It's, yes, there's still suffering, there's still pain in this world, but you start to see the divine in it, and you start to be able to relate to the divine in others and to be able to help others much more easily, because again, you're relating from your calm center of awareness to this world of divine awareness. Experiment with this week especially, and practice this affirmation and read the reading every day if you can. So Premdas now will take us more deeply into this affirmation. We'll repeat it several times together.
Thank you, Devarshi. That was very inspiring. Thank you. And so now, since we'll just do the affirmation together, few times in a loud voice, few times in a normal voice, then whisper, then taking it in deep into subconsciousness, and then offering it at the spiritual life. So please repeat with me. First time in a loud voice. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and as of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. Now in a normal voice, please repeat. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. Once more, I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. Now let's repeat it. Now please repeat mentally. Let's take it deep into subconsciousness. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. Again, let's repeat mentally, taking deep into subconsciousness. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. This time, let's focusing at the spiritual eye. Please repeat mentally along with me. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. Let's do it again. I behold the world with eyes of calmness and as of faith. For I know that as I view others, so will I myself become. Let's end with a prayer. O Lord, infuse me from my deepest center with thy joy. Make me aware of Thee, my divine beloved, in all that I behold. Om Shanti Shanti. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll meet with you again the coming week. And
Thank you all. Many blessings.